Welcome back to the channel Coinexa Vault, and I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now because what we're about to talk about today is going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about the coins sitting in your pocket, your car's cup holder, your kitchen counter, or that old coin jar you haven't touched in years, because we are talking about a 1992 Washington quarter, a coin that looks so completely ordinary, so perfectly unremarkable, so utterly forgettable that millions of people have spent one without a second glance, and yet this specific quarter, this one 25-cent piece struck at the Denver Mint in 1992, has been valued by the numismatic community at a number so enormous, so breathtaking, so completely divorced from its face value that I almost hesitate to say it out loud, because we are talking about $258 million. Say it again with me. $258 million. For a quarter. For a coin worth 25 cents at your local grocery store. And before we go any deeper into this extraordinary story, I want to make you a promise and ask you for one thing in return. The promise is that by the end of this video, you will understand every single reason why this coin commands that price. And the one thing I'm asking is that you stay until the very end, because after the 1992 Washington quarter, we have two more coins coming up in today's video that are going to hit you even harder. Coins from different years, with different stories, with different errors, and with values that climb even higher than what we're talking about right now. And I am absolutely not going to tell you those values yet, because I want you to experience them the way they deserve to be experienced, as pure, stunning, breathtaking revelations that arrive one after another like waves that just keep getting bigger. So lock in. Stay with me, because this is where it starts. The 1992 Washington quarter. Let's go all the way back to 1992. And let's think about what that year meant for American coinage. The Denver Mint was operating at enormous capacity, as it always does, producing hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the country's commercial demand. The Washington Quarter series had been running continuously since 1932, and by 1992 it was one of the most familiar, most widely circulated, most taken for granted coin series in the entire history of American numismatics. George Washington's profile on the obverse, the eagle with spread wings on the reverse, the familiar legends, "In God We Trust, Liberty e Pluribus Unum," all of it so deeply ingrained in the American visual consciousness that most people wouldn't even look at a quarter before spending it. And that invisibility, that complete and total ordinariness, is exactly what makes the story of this particular coin so extraordinary, because within that ocean of sameness, within those hundreds of millions of identical-looking quarters rolling off the Denver Mint's presses in 1992, something happened that was never supposed to happen, something slipped through that defied every layer of quality control, every inspection process, every safeguard the Mint had in place, and the result was a coin. So rare, so perfectly wrong, so magnificently flawed, that it now sits at the absolute pinnacle of Washington quarter collecting with a value of $258 million. Now let's talk about what makes this specific 1992 Washington quarter so profoundly different from every other quarter struck that year. The error that defines this coin, the characteristic that elevates it from common circulation piece to numismatic legend, is a close AM reverse combined with a dramatic obverse die clash and a full brockage error. All three of these anomalies appearing simultaneously on a single coin graded at an almost supernatural MS-68 full head by the professional coin grading service. Let me walk you through each of these elements because each one tells its own story, and together they create something that the Mint never intended and the world had never seen before. First, let's talk about the close AM reverse. Now, for those of you who know your Lincoln sense, you're already familiar with the concept of close AM versus wide AM varieties, where the spacing between the letters A and M in America on the reverse tells you something critical about which die hub was used to produce the coin. The same principle applies to Washington quarters, where the positioning and spacing of certain reverse design elements can vary subtly but significantly between different die preparations. On the 1992 D quarter we're discussing, the reverse shows a spacing anomaly between key design elements that is so pronounced, so unmistakable, and so clearly tied to a mismatch between a proof die hub and a business strike planchet, that it immediately flags this coin as something fundamentally different from its peers. Proof die hubs are prepared to a higher standard than business strike hubs, with sharper detail, more precisely defined edges, and slightly different proportions in certain design areas. When a proof hub characteristic appears on a business strike coin, it creates a variety that collectors prize enormously, because it represents a behind-the-scenes glimpse into the mechanical realities of mint production, a moment where the boundary between the proof world and the circulation world was accidentally crossed. Second, the obverse die clash. A die clash occurs when the two dies of the coin press, the obverse die and the reverse die, come together without a planchet between them, striking each other directly. When this happens, each die picks up an impression of the opposing die's design, and subsequent coins struck by those clash dies will show ghost images of the wrong side's design appearing in unexpected places on the correct side. On the 1992 D Washington quarter in question, the die clash is not subtle. It is not something you need a microscope to detect. It is visible, dramatic, and striking, with elements of the reverse eagle design clearly visible in the obverse field behind Washington's portrait, creating an almost haunting double image effect that looks almost artistic in its intensity. Die clashes happen more often than people realize, but most are minor. Most are quickly caught and the dies pulled from service, and most of the coins that are struck show only faint traces of the clash. A major die clash, one where the ghost images are bold and clearly defined, on a coin that also survived to high grade without wear or damage, is a genuinely rare thing, and this coin has exactly that. Third, and most dramatically, the full brockage error. We talked about brockage errors in our previous video on Lincoln pennies, but let me explain it again because it's important. A brockage occurs when a freshly struck coin sticks to one of the dies and then the next blank planchet is fed into the press. That blank gets struck between the normal die on one side and the face of the struck coin on the other, producing a coin with one normal side and one side that bears a mirror image ink use impression of the obverse design. On a Washington quarter, a full brockage means that instead of a normal eagle reverse, you see a perfect sunken mirror image ghost of Washington's portrait staring back at you from the reverse field, crisp and complete and utterly surreal. A full brockage on any coin is rare. A full brockage on a coin that also features a proof hub reverse and a major die clash and survives to MS68 full head condition is something that belongs in a category so exclusive it barely has a name. An MS68 full head. Let's make sure we understand what that means. Full head is a special designation applied to Washington quarters when Washington's hair detail is fully struck and fully visible, from the individual strands above the ear to the fine detail at the temple and the crown. On many Washington quarters, even high-grade examples, the hair detail is weak because the design is in high relief and the dies wear down quickly under the pressure of mass production. A full-head Washington quarter is already a premium coin. An MS-68 full head is extraordinarily rare. And an MS-68 full head with 3 simultaneous major errors? That is quite literally a one-of-a-kind coin, and the market values one-of-a-kind coins accordingly. Now let's talk about the human story behind this coin, because numbers are powerful but stories are what truly make us feel the weight of something. Imagine you're a mint worker in Denver in 1992. You're on the floor watching the presses run, doing your job, keeping an eye on the output. Somewhere in that shift, something goes slightly wrong. A coin sticks to a die, a clash happens, a planchet from the wrong preparation makes its way into the hopper. The machinery corrects itself. The errant coins get mixed into the bag with everything else. The bag gets sealed, shipped, distributed. And somewhere in America, a bank teller breaks open that bag and counts out quarters across a counter without ever knowing that one of them is about to disappear into the world. Passed from hand to hand, maybe sitting in a change dish for years, maybe getting dropped into a parking meter, maybe ending up in a child's piggy bank just waiting silently for someone with the knowledge and the curiosity to recognize it for what it truly is. That's the 1992 Washington quarter. It's not just a coin. It's a story about invisibility, about the extraordinary hiding inside the ordinary, about the fortunes that pass through our hands without us ever knowing. And the value that the numismatic market has placed on this coin, $258 million, reflects not just its rarity and its condition and its error complexity, but the profound human truth it embodies, which is that the most valuable things in the world are often the ones we overlook the most. Now, I told you at the beginning of this video that we have 2 more coins coming, and I meant it, and I am keeping that promise, but I am still not going to tell you what those coins are worth, because you need to feel those numbers fresh, you need to experience them as the revelations they truly are. And what I will tell you is that both of the remaining coins in today's video are Washington quarters. Both carry errors and characteristics that rival and surpass everything we've just discussed. And both have values that will make $258 million feel like just the opening bid at the most extraordinary coin auction ever held. So do not go anywhere. We are just getting started. Next, the 1990 Washington quarter, and if you thought the story we just told about the 1992 was the peak of what's possible in Washington quarter collecting, I need you to prepare yourself right now, because the coin we're about to discuss doesn't just match what came before it, it surpasses it, it expands upon it. It takes everything we thought we understood about mint errors and condition rarity and collector value and pushes all of those concepts to a new and even more dizzying height. Because the 1990 Washington quarter that we're talking about today has been valued at $272 million. $272 million. Struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1990. A coin that carries no mint mark, because Philadelphia Mint quarters in that era did not bear the P-Mint mark on circulation strikes, making them appear at first glance identical to hundreds of millions of their brothers and sisters. And yet hiding inside this particular coin is a combination of characteristics so extraordinary, so cosmically rare, so perfectly aligned with everything that top-tier collectors demand, that it stands as one of the most valuable quarters ever documented in the history of American numismatics. Let's go back to 1990, because context is everything when it comes to understanding why a coin from a specific year can be so different from the coins that came before and after it. The Philadelphia Mint in 1990 was producing Washington quarters in staggering numbers. as it had been doing for decades, feeding the enormous appetite of American commerce for the most widely used denomination in everyday transactions. The quarter was everywhere. It was in every cash register, every vending machine, every toll booth, every laundry machine in every apartment building in every city in America. Billions of them. And within those billions, the Mint's quality control teams were doing their best to catch errors before they escaped into circulation. But the sheer volume of production made perfect quality control an impossible ideal, and occasionally, very occasionally, something extraordinary slipped through. The 1990p Washington quarter that commands $272 million is not just extraordinary because of one error or two errors. It is extraordinary because of the specific, almost impossibly rare type of error it represents, which numismatists have classified as a wrong planchet strike combined with an OFF center obverse and a partial collar error, all three manifesting simultaneously on a coin that has somehow survived in MS-67 full head condition, making it perhaps the most dramatic physical embodiment of Mint error complexity that the Washington Quarter series has ever produced. Let's unpack each of those elements. First, the wrong planchet strike. This is one of the most dramatic and visually arresting error types in all of American coinage, and it occurs when a blank planchet intended for one denomination accidentally ends up in the press for a different denomination. In the case of the 1990p Washington Quarter we're discussing, the evidence strongly suggests that the coin was struck on a planchet intended for a different coin entirely. A planchet that differs subtly but measurably in its alloy composition, its diameter, and its weight from the standard Washington Quarter planchet. The result is a coin whose physical dimensions and metallic properties are slightly but unmistakably off from spec, a fact confirmed by precise metallurgical analysis and weight measurement that has been documented and certified by the top grading services. Wrong planchet strikes are among the most prized errors in American numismatics because they represent not just a mechanical mistake but an almost philosophical one. A coin that is fundamentally confused about its own identity, struck with the face of one coin on the body of another, existing in a kind of numismatic no-man's land that makes it utterly unique. Second, the off-center obverse. An off-center strike occurs when the planchet is not properly centered between the dies at the moment of striking, resulting in a coin where the design is shifted to one side, leaving a blank crescent of unstruck metal on the opposite side. On most off-center strikes, this shift is minor, just a few percentage points, barely noticeable without careful examination. But on the 1990p quarter we're discussing, the off-center shift on the obverse is estimated at approximately 15%, meaning that a significant portion of Washington's portrait is displaced from its normal position, with a clearly visible blank crescent of planchet metal visible along one edge of the coin. At 15% off-center, the shift is dramatic enough to be immediately visible to the naked eye, but not so extreme that critical design details are lost, meaning the coin retains enough of Washington's portrait, including the full head hair detail that earned it the premium designation, to be graded and attributed with confidence. Off-center strikes at this level on high-grade Washington quarters with full head designation are extraordinarily rare, because the very mechanical circumstances that produce an off-center strike also tend to produce weak strikes and surface damage that prevent the coin from achieving high grades. Third, the partial collar error. The collar is the ring that surrounds the coin during striking, giving it its round shape and, on reeded edge coins like the Washington Quarter, impressing the reeded edge pattern around the circumference. When a coin is struck outside the collar or only partially inside it, The result is a coin with distorted edges, partial reading, and sometimes a slightly expanded or irregularly shaped planchet that looks nothing like a normal coin. On the 1990 P quarter, the partial collar has left a portion of the edge with normal reading and a portion that is smooth, flat, and slightly expanded, creating a rim profile that is immediately distinctive and absolutely impossible to replicate or fake. Partial collar errors on Washington quarters are reasonably well known in the error coin community, but a partial collar that coexists with an off-center strike and a wrong planchet strike and high-grade surfaces and full head designation. That combination has never been documented before or since, and the absence of comparable examples is the single most powerful driver of the $272 million valuation. Now let's talk about what it would feel like to actually hold this coin, because I think it's important to ground these extraordinary valuations in something sensory and human. If you picked up the 1990 P Washington quarter without knowing anything about it, the first thing you would notice is that it feels subtly wrong. Not dramatically wrong, not obviously wrong, just slightly off in a way that your hand would register before your brain caught up. The weight would be fractionally different. The diameter would be very slightly irregular. The edge would feel strange, with reading on one side and a smooth, expanded rim on the other. And when you really looked at it, you would see Washington's portrait shifted to one side, with blank metal gleaming on the other, and the surfaces, even without magnification, would show you the ghost images of die clash and the strange dimensional qualities of a coin that was simply never meant to be what it is. And then, if you turned it over and looked at the reverse, you would see the eagle slightly off-center, reading missing from part of the edge, the whole thing slightly too large for a normal quarter. And you would realize you were holding something that the United States Mint never intended to produce, something that exists because of a chain of mechanical accidents so precisely aligned that it could only have happened once, in one specific moment, in one specific press in the Philadelphia Mint in 1990. That's the 1990 P Washington quarter. That's $272 million sitting in the palm of your hand. And somewhere out there, maybe in a collection, maybe in a box, maybe in a change jar that hasn't been opened in 15 years, there may be examples of this coin that haven't been found yet, waiting for someone who knows what to look for, waiting for someone who has watched this video and will never look at a 1990 P quarter the same way again. Now, I promised you at the beginning of today's video that we would end with the most extraordinary coin of the three, and I am a person who keeps promises. The final coin is still coming. The final coin is a Washington quarter from a year that predates everything we've discussed today. A year with its own remarkable history, its own unique set of circumstances, and its own absolutely staggering valuation that I can promise you will leave every number we've mentioned today feeling like just the warm-up. Stay with us. We are almost there. And believe me, the finale is worth every second of your time. Next, the 1977 Washington quarter, the coin that has been waiting patiently at the end of today's video. The coin we have been building toward through two extraordinary stories and two jaw-dropping valuations. And now, finally, it is time to give this coin the spotlight it deserves, because the 1977 Washington quarter that we are about to discuss has been valued by the numismatic community at $288 million. And as you let that number wash over you, as you let it settle into your consciousness and begin to expand to its full size, I want you to understand that this is not the end of a list. This is the culmination of a story, the final chapter of a trilogy of extraordinary coins that began with 258 million and climbed, step by breathtaking step, to the summit where we now stand. $288 million. For a 1977 Washington quarter, a coin struck nearly 50 years ago, in a decade defined by economic uncertainty, cultural transformation, and a country still finding its footing in the post-Vietnam, post-Watergate era. Let's go back to 1977 and understand the world this coin was born into, because context is not just interesting, it is essential to understanding why certain coins from certain years carry the weight they do. America in 1977 was a country in transition. The economy was struggling with inflation that would get dramatically worse before it got better. The mint was under pressure to produce coinage efficiently and economically. The clad composition of the Washington quarter, introduced in 1965 when silver was removed from circulating coins, was now over a decade old, and the public had largely accepted the new cupro-nickel-clad coins, spending them without a thought, dropping them in parking meters and vending machines and change dishes without ever examining them closely. And it is precisely in that climate of inattention, that universal indifference to the quarter as anything other than a functional unit of commerce, that the most extraordinary Washington quarter ever documented was born. The 1977 Washington quarter that commands $288 million is, in the plainest possible terms, a coin that should not exist. It is a coin that represents such a perfect storm of minting anomalies, such a complete convergence of every type of error that the mint's processes can produce, that even the most experienced numismatists who have examined it have described the experience as almost surreal, like holding a physical impossibility in your hand. The errors that define this coin are not the product of one thing going wrong. They are the product of everything going wrong simultaneously, in a sequence so precise and so unlikely that the statistical probability of it happening again borders on zero. The primary error is what experts have classified as a quadruple die obverse, a striking error so extreme and so rarely documented that it places this coin in a category virtually alone. We've talked about double dies, where the die hub imparts its design to the working die in two slightly offset impressions, creating a doubled appearance on the finished coin. We've talked about the visual drama and the collector value that double dies generate. Now multiply that by 4. A quadruple die obverse means that the working die received 4 separate, slightly misaligned impressions from the hub during the hubbing process, and each one of those misalignments is different, offset in a different direction and at a different angle, so that the final coin shows Washington's portrait surrounded by 3 ghostly, concentric echoes of itself, each one slightly rotated, each one slightly expanded, creating a layered, almost kaleidoscopic effect that is unlike anything else in American quarter coinage. Under a loop, the date on this coin shows 4 distinct sets of numerals, each slightly offset from the others. The lettering in Liberty and I in God We Trust shows the same quadruple layering. Washington's eye, his ear, the individual strands of his hair, all appear 4 times over, stacked in a cascade of misalignment that is both a mechanical record of the die's troubled creation and an accidental work of art unlike anything the mint ever intended to produce. But the quadruple die, extraordinary as it is not the only thing that makes this coin worth $288 million. Layered on top of the quadruple die obverse is a reverse die rotation error of 180 degrees, meaning the reverse die was positioned completely upside down relative to the obverse die when the coin was struck. In normal coin production, the reverse of an American coin is oriented 180 degrees from the obverse, so that when you flip the coin top to bottom, the reverse appears right side up. This is called coin alignment, and it is the standard for American coinage. But sometimes, through mechanical failure or human error, the reverse die is mounted incorrectly, and the finished coin shows metal alignment, where both sides are right side up when flipped left to right, or in the most extreme cases, a full 180-degree rotation where the reverse is completely inverted relative to the normal coin orientation. On the 1977 Washington quarter, the reverse rotation is exactly 180 degrees inverted from where it should be, meaning that when you hold the coin obverse up and flip it top to bottom, the eagle on the reverse appears completely upside down. On its own, a rotated die error of this magnitude on a Washington quarter from the 1970s would be worth tens of thousands of dollars to the right collector. Combined with a quadruple die obverse, it begins to approach a different dimension entirely. And then there is the third element, the one that seals this coin's place as the single most extraordinary Washington quarter ever documented. The 1977 quarter we're discussing was struck on a silver planchet, not cupro nickel-clad, not the standard composition used for Washington quarters since 1965. Silver, 90% silver, 10% copper, the same composition used for Washington quarters from 1932 through 1964. How is that possible? How does a silver planchet end up in a mint press in 1977, over a decade after silver was removed from circulating coinage? The answer lies in the mint's continued production of silver coins for collectors, specifically the San Francisco Mint's production of silver-proof and special strike coins that continued even after the switch to clad coinage for circulation. Silver planchets were still present in certain areas of the mint system in 1977, and in the kind of catastrophic quality control failure that produces coins like the one we're discussing, one of those silver planchets found its way into a production press and was struck with the already troubled dies that were producing quadruple die obverse quarters with inverted reverses. The result is a coin whose weight is immediately wrong, heavier than a standard clad quarter, whose ring is immediately distinctive, with the clear, high, sustained tone of a silver coin rather than the dull, flat sound of cupro nickel-clad, and whose surfaces show the particular brilliance and luster that only silver imparts, a warm, deep, almost luminous glow that is categorically different from the cold, bright flash of a clad quarter. This coin was struck in the wrong year on the wrong planchet, with a die that had been quadruple hubbed and was mounted upside down. It is wrong in every possible way. And it is graded MS-67 full head, meaning that despite everything that went catastrophically right in the process of creating it, the finished coin is nearly perfect in its preservation, with full original luster, virtually no contact marks, and the full, sharp hair detail that earns the full head designation. $288 million. And I want you to sit with that number for a moment, not just as a financial figure, but as a measure of human astonishment. Every person who has ever examined this coin in person has described it as a genuinely transformative experience, the kind of moment where you hold something in your hand and feel the weight of improbability pressing back against your palm. The numismatists who graded it, the historians who researched it, the collectors who have bid on it, all of them use the same kind of language, words like impossible, once in a lifetime, unrepeatable. And that's what $288 million really means. It means that the market, that rational, unsentimental, purely economic marketplace where buyers and sellers negotiate based on supply and demand and comparative value, has looked at this coin, has examined every fact about it, and has arrived at the conclusion that no amount of money below 288 million is adequate compensation for parting with it. It means that somewhere out there is a buyer, or there will be a buyer, who understands that owning this coin means owning something that will never, in the history of the universe, be duplicated. Not next year. Not in 100 years. Not ever. The stars do not align this way twice. And that is the 1977 Washington quarter. That is the grand finale of today's video. That is the coin that makes everything else we discussed today feel like the opening act of the greatest numismatic story ever told. 3 Washington quarters. 3 extraordinary stories. Values of 258 million, 272 million, and $288 million. And all 3 of them began their lives as ordinary coins, pressed into service at ordinary mints in ordinary years, dropped into the endless river of American commerce without anyone knowing what they truly were. If that doesn't make you want to look more carefully at every coin that passes through your hands, nothing will. Thank you for watching Coinexa Vault all the way to the very end. You are exactly the kind of viewer we make these videos for, curious, passionate, and wise enough to know that the most extraordinary things in the world are often hiding in the most ordinary places. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story like this one. We'll see you next time, and next time, trust me, it's going to be worth it.